Good afternoon to our next webinar. That's the webinar about Jovian DSS, and we have something like a solution which everybody dream about. So this is a storage and native backup with this, together with the storage. This can work also for disaster recovery, and it can work as a hyper convert storage under VMware or Hyper-V. I will show VMware today. Our agenda for today is I'm going to introduce the offsite data protection. That's the native backup service, which is a feature part of the Jovian DSS. Then we will introduce also hyper-convergent setup, how to do it, what you need to set to have the best performance. And this round the clock backup of everything because we backup, the operating system, so the whole virtual machine, all the applications, databases, and so on. The demo will be based on the MS SQL with a running script in production, right? Then we will live demo the restore and disaster recovery, and we will also show how to access to the previous files if you use a filer as well, because we have a NFS SMB, and you can also export shares into the network, right? So backup, yeah, that's a big story about, we can have big stories about backup. Backup is something what everybody knows. It is very, very important. And I'm not going to talk a lot, just a few slides. Of course, you can imagine any bad thing. So Murphy law works always when something can go wrong, then it will go wrong. So you need to be prepared, and you know that the backup is IT without backup is like driving car on the autobahn without the brake. So it can be dangerous. Next question will be about how often I need backup. Of course, if you cannot make so often like round the clock, then you make the backup in the evening. Some people make even backup once a week, and because the backup task is very heavy and making impossible to work when the backup works. So backup is so heavy task that the production almost doesn't work, mostly. There are some solutions, of course, there are plenty of them. One of them will be our Jovian DSS based solution. Backup works in the background, nobody noticed that it works, and you have a backup every minute. Okay, so also think like restore is sometimes complicated. Just a running backup applications, they are very heavy and also very complicated, need to learn, and of course it can be expensive, right? So where to backup, to public cloud or local, there are always these questions to consider. We have perfect solution, I hope, and I hope you will agree, and I'm going to introduce it now. So that's the offsite data protection. It is a solution which is based on the send-receive. Of course, the send-receive alone, it's not enough. There is a lot of software development which is on top on this, and that's the offsite data protection which I'm going to introduce now. So you can have the production server and you can have a backup server. On the left side we have just a ZFS file or block, so means you can have an iSCSI, soon of course fiber channel, you can have an iSCSI and the file, so NFS or SMB CIFS running, and all these volumes will have the rotational snapshots. Rotational means we will make the snapshots, and when the snapshots are older than defined retention, then the snapshots will be just deleted. And you can have plenty retention interval policies, so plans, right? And the snapshots are replicated. Nice thing here about this technology is that when the replication starts, so the software knows already what needs to be replicated. It's not like, for example, rsync, when you are moving data with rsync, which is perfect replication application for files, rsync need to find the delta first. Here the delta I already know. That's why we can make the replication very frequently. I was testing sometimes in lab every 20 seconds and it works also. Our default will be now 5 minutes, and our demo today was every minute, that we don't need to wait so long for the results, right? That's how the retention interval works. So we have a chart. On the left side it's our production server, and on the right side is our backup server. So we can have on the production server, we can have for the last 1 hour a snapshot every minute, for example. Of course, how long, maybe you need not 1 hour, but maybe you need 8 hours. You just defined how long you need frequent snapshots. Then you need maybe less frequent snapshots, let's say every 1 hour, and that's for 1 day. And then for the last month, just every day. That will be available on your production server. And on your destination server, you can even, here in this example, we have 5 years. Of course, if you write 15 years, then it will be 15 years. But what is the side effect of this? When you are keeping snapshots for 5 years, so all deleted and changed data need to be stored for the 5 years. So when you will delete a lot, this data will be taking space on your backup server, right? But this is obvious that when you backup the data, also deleted files are also in the backup, right? And RPO, RTO, so the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective. Here we have a brilliant solution, because when we make a backup every minute, that after disaster my data are no older than 1 minute old, right? Before disaster happened. And how fast I can recover, it is just also few minutes, because you just need to mount the volumes and insert machines to inventory and boot them. So it's just a task which takes few minutes. Why our offsite data protection is so good? Because it's all in one, so it's storage and native backup, right? So you don't need third-party software. It will back up everything, because it is just backing up the whole volume, right? There is no such a things like you need that your backup window is too long because it takes too much time to backup. Backup is just done around the clock, right? And then of course you have all versions, so you can come back to the older version if needed. Without administrator, when you have filer, I mentioned to you, without administrator, the users can access just the previous versions. And I will just maybe move to our local directory, which I'm using in our filer in production. I just have our NAS, OpenE. That's okay, OpenE presentations, Jovian. Maybe I go to the properties and previous versions. So you see I have snapshots which are running, and then let's say maybe from the last week I need data from 4 p.m. from the 20th of November. So I just click this, double click, and you see I have access to this directory from the 20th of November, and I can open my files, right? So the file was last changed 10 of November. It was not changed by meantime. If I will have another file which is changing often, I will have the exact data which I need. So I can come back to the older version without asking administrator for help, right? So it is very convenient. Let's say 12th of November, just double click, and I have access to my data from 12th of November. Okay. Nice, I mentioned already, nice is that this is light backup engine. When the snapshots are done, nobody noticed that this is done. So if you have no snapshot or 10,000 snapshots active in your system, the performance is the same. It doesn't matter. Also, it doesn't need really data which you will notice for making snapshots, right? Making snapshots, you can compare like creating directory, right, in the legacy file system. So it costs nothing. That's why we very often say that snapshots are for free. You can also optionally remove your destination backups, right? And we have also encrypted passwords, so you can send the data over wide area network or even internet. Okay, that's the again reason why you need backup, what can happen, what you need to consider, but this is I think obvious. Advantages, summary, actually we have mentioned already. That's very good solution, very flexible. Okay, we need to make sure that we also understand the difference between data protection and the high availability. You know, the high availability, sometimes people mixing with data protection. High availability, of course, keep business running when the hardware failure, and the data protection is protecting your data, right? High availability only is not protecting the data. So a nice thing is that the Jovian is shipping both. So you can have high availability cluster including data protection native, right? So another discussion about public and the private cloud. Of course, there are plus and minus for every solution. I have seen recently a TV document about the cloud, and the guy on the end of the program was telling, if you have a really sensitive data, never post it to the cloud. That's the proof that very often, you know, the user passwords or user accounts or something are really stolen or leaked from the most famous cloud providers, and this happens all the time. And that's not the end of this story. This is a never-ending story. I want to quickly show what kind of possibilities we have with the data protection, right? So even if you not replicate and if you have no backup pool, you have just production pool, you have already some protection with offsite data protection. First, you have protection against virus because you can run snapshots, right? Auto snapshots without replicating them. Because of the self-healing feature, you are protected against data corruption. Because of the write built-in, this is obvious, you are protected against disk failure, right? But it is still plenty possibilities which are missing. So let us go to next slide. And now I have a bit better, still cheap. I have a data pool and the backup pool within the same server, but it's already, you know, much better, because in case of the pool failure or a rebuild failure or too many disk failure in the pool, then the defined redundancy, then we have a local backup and we can survive such a disaster, right? But still many points are not covered here. So let us go to next one. That will be already kind of good. We have a local backup and we have a backup pool on the second server. So we have two backup destinations. So that's already very good, because very often you will need that. If you want to backup consider as a backup, you need to have at least two backups, right? So that is already coming near to this ideal point. But of course, many things can happen that both servers disappear and you have a problem. So next one, you have the remote server. Of course, we can run all this in parallel. Once here we have three destinations. One is a local pool, second is a second server in the local area network, and one more, the third one is the remote site, right? So we are already very good protected, but still no high availability. Okay, let us go to next slide. Yes, we can mix high availability and data protection in one. So on this chart we have a high availability cluster, So that's my data production data pool, which can fail over here to the second server. And because of the load balancing on the second HA node, I have another pool which is also running the snapshots, and I can fail over to another one. Okay, so that's my HA cluster, and I have a backup server, a local, and I have a backup server remote. Right, so here I very green, and I can have a high availability and real data protection with 2 destinations. So that's already, let's say, very recommended solution for expensive data. We can have more possibilities. Of course, I was showing here source as a HA cluster and destination single node, but you can have a source and a destination as a cluster, right? Everything can be HA. This is working and is checked by our QA. Of course, it was a extra small development needed that it works properly, right? Another option, you have 2 data centers, and one server is running on the data server 1 and is running as a disaster recovery backup server on the second data center, and opposite, another one is running on 2 as a production and is backing up to the first, right? So that's the typical data center solution, right? So, and last slide before we will move to demo, or almost last, is we can run our Jovian as a virtual machine, and that's the case today. I will be doing so. All the features, every time on last webinars, I'm touching a little about all the features. They are features sorted into data integrity, protection, availability, acceleration, optimization, accessibility, and virtualization, right? So almost everything what you can imagine is here covered, right? Actually everything. And that's our setup which I made for today, that we want to live demo our offsite data protection. On the left side I have a server which is running VMware, and Jovian is running as a virtual storage appliance on the left side, and on the right side the same situation. And I will be just running MS SQL Windows database and writing continuously. So the script will be writing the data, and we will simulate disaster, right? So let us switch to our demonstration environment. As I mentioned, I have a 2 Jovian. The first Jovian node 32 and second Jovian node 42, right? So of course I have here 2 servers, and vCenter is running, and the vCenter I just have 2 6 machines, and the first machine is running this Jovian 32, and the second 6 is running virtual storage appliance and also running vCenter in this case. Okay, so the 6 is configured in advanced settings. You see LSI, we have a LSI as a pass-through device. So that's the HBA, which is managing the disks, and this is the direct path device. So this device is of course here in the in this machine present as a LSI logic HBA, right? So that's pass through. So Jovian in this case has a full control with the hard disks. Okay, so the hard disks which are in the Jovian are just connected over this HBA. Okay, so A6 is actually not managing this PCI Express device, but Jovian. Okay, so here is our Win MS SQL machine, and when I go to settings, you see that when I go to settings, I will show you that's the local disk in this machine. I'm running this on local iSCSI Win007, right? So this is important because you know, the machine is renamed and the directory was Win007. I was testing in the past the duplication. That's one is dedupe because I was just duplicating these machines. Okay, and now I was installing MS SQL and running this machine. Okay, I will show you the script. Here is a script which is running all the time in the loop and is writing a small amount of data to this SQL server. How script works, I will show you here. That's the script which is doing creating the database and creating the table, and is running in the infinite loop all the time, and is just adding this data to the database, right? And is just prompting the index. I have another script which is checking consistency. So I can check consistency and see how many records is in this database. Okay, the IP is 246, and IP is 246 because my MS SQL is exactly this machine. Okay, so we can prove that this script is here really running this when I will shut down this machine, right? Okay, shut down the guest. So we see we have, of course, the problem. My script is already showing the error, right? So I will power on this machine and see what's going on with my script. So machine is starting. Okay, it's just booting. And that's it. So the script works. If I stop it, right, so I was just stopping this and start again, so it will create new database and will start this loop from the beginning, right? So we see this script is working, writing data to my MS SQL all the time, and we maybe have some problem with this machine and we would like to fix it, right? So my problem can be that, for example, this machine somehow hang, and I will have to restore this from the backup, right? So again, that will be a nice simulation if I just power off this machine. I cannot power on when the snapshot is running. We have the setup done already. Everything works in the background, so even the virtual machine shut down the guest. Okay, so I have already errors. And okay, I see my production stop, machine hang, is not available. Let me start the machine from the disaster recovery. Okay, so I will go to my second. Before I go to the second machine, I will change to this host and go to storage adapter. You see, there is nothing there, but I'm prepared that when I go to my disaster recovery server, I go to iSCSI targets. I have a target, but no volume. The volume I can just attach to the target very quickly. Okay, then I go to rescan. That's my volume, and I will just add it, okay, to my storage data stores inventory. Script is just all the time not running. That's a problem. Okay, we just add. You always add new signature, so that will be the case. In our case, I have no choice. I have to use new signature because my original volume is in the vCenter registered, so it will be conflict. It will not add with the same signature. If that will be separated environment, you can keep the same signature. But any time you just enter new signature, it's a proper way to work. Okay, so that's it's making the resignature of the new volume and adding to my inventory. Okay, that's the case, and now I can just browse to my machines. That was Win007, okay, and add to inventory. Win, I will put different name. It was minus, I will put dot MSSQL. Okay, I just want on my disaster recovery SX, and I am ready to start. Of course, it shows me the MAC conflict because machine is bit identical with the first one. Okay, so I will just start the machine, and of course now we need to answer the question whether we copy this. When I say copy this, so Windows will reconfigure the machine, so we'll change the MAC address. When I move it, then machine will be started identical, bit identical with the original machine. So I will have exactly same. I will have exactly same IP if this is from the DHCP. Maybe it was static IP, but the advantage is when you start without reconfigure, that the Windows don't need to reconfigure the machine. If you copy, Windows need to reconfigure. So you see, it's just continue to writing the data, and my production is back up and running. So it took me maybe a few minutes when this problem happened to come back and see my script were running again. So I say bravo, everything super. I'm able with a very fresh data able to run my production again. On this machine, when I go into the snapshots and the snapshot manager, in this case I made it fast, so the snapshot is still there, right? But it could happen that I was just stopping the machine and the snapshot was replicated, and then of course then the snapshot here will be missing, right? So this is, in this case I don't need this virtual machine snapshot because machine was already powered off, right? So it's the, of course, best situation, and everything is 100% consistent. This happens to me on the last webinar, that I didn't know what's going on, but I was powering off the machine. By meantime, the storage snapshot was made because the snapshots are running all the time. I didn't kill my environment, and this snapshot was not there, but this time is there, so we can show how it works. Okay, when I will just go and say go to means revert. So when I was reverting, the machine is stopped. My script has a problem. It's stopped. It's not working anymore. So now I will just power on the machine again. I will try to cancel. Okay. So it's cancelled. Nice. I have a second script which is check. The checking, you see, the check, it showed me 382. It was actually the moment when the last snapshot was made. So it was a loop at the 382. So that's why the check is showing me only 382. If I will just maybe start the script one more time, just short, and stop it and check, you see, then it's just loop, it show 18 because it was a one difference, right? So one more time, I'm writing the loop is after the record is written. I stop it, I'm check it, and you see that's exactly showing me the situation, what is exactly now. And next short live demo is now will be a different story. I will just power off this machine. I will remove it from the inventory, and I will unmount my disaster recovery volume. And of course I need to detach, because at this time when the volume was attached, I was getting errors and the replication didn't work. Okay, so now the replication will start to work again. We will maybe see that my last snapshot now was 1626, you see. So the by last few minutes the snapshot was not working because the volume was mounted and used. Of course, in this case the volume was already locked for this target and replication didn't work. In the next minute we will see now that the all missing snapshots will be replicated. When I go to source, in source I will see that the snapshots were running all the time. That's my zvol. Okay, and when I scroll, now it's already refreshing the screen, so the missing snapshots are replicated. So okay, so I will be seeing the, you see, that's the case. Now it's 1633. The missing snapshots were already replicated, and of course here on the source the snapshots were running all the time. Okay, so we have snapshots running all the time. We have no snapshots running in VMware because machine is power off. When the machine is power off, of course no snapshots are running. Okay, we will power on our database again, and I will just start my worker script, right? Worker script will again create new database and we start to write the scripts. Okay, so that's the case. It was a short error because the machine was not really fully started. But now we are back ready to make another demonstration. So here I will wait a little just for the next snapshot to be done, and every minute I'm doing a storage snapshot, but before storage snapshot is done, it is sending request to ESX to make the virtual machine snapshots. We have done already one demonstration and we didn't use virtual machine snapshot, and we have seen that it was working. So actually I didn't really need this virtual machine snapshot. My storage snapshot was enough to start my MS SQL into the production, right? So, but if it happens that there is a very sensitive machine or running in non-transactional mode, then of course making a virtual machine snapshot and having in the replicated storage also a virtual machine with snapshot inside of the local disk, that of course will be helping to have the consistency, right? So now we have seen that at least one snapshot was done, okay, and the snapshots are done and removed very quickly. So this is also another advantage, that when our virtual machine is creating a snapshot, then afterwards the storage is making snapshot very quick and is sending another commands to remove the snapshot from the virtual machine. Because when the snapshot virtual machine runs snapshots, so the Windows especially, it may be a bit slower. It don't have the full performance, especially when the machine is running under heavy duty pattern, right? So here we can observe the snapshot just made, and we see it's not really affecting our script. The script is just working like as usual, right? Maybe just a marginal influence, right? But normally not. Okay, so now I would like to make some drastical problem, and my drastical problem will be like powering off. Okay, I go to power control and reset, right? So when I reset, then my system is rebooting already. Okay, so I see this script stop to write because I have a really disaster. So my old environment from the first machine is not more in the service. Of course, the VMware has a 140 seconds timer, so it still shows as everything works, but it's not true. Okay, so now I know the people are calling me, nothing works, so I say, okay, let us fix the problem. So I go to my, of course, the Jovian is showing it's not working, but our disaster recovery is up and running, is happy. So we go to our iSCSI targets, we just attach to target. We go to add. Now we go to our disaster recovery server. Okay, let us go here. Okay, so storage adapters, rescan. That's our volume. Okay, we can add the disk. Again, assign new signature. So that's the resignature is in progress, and after, okay, you see our script just stop. Of course, it will after timeout showing some error here, but let us get the production as soon as possible. So we just need to wait for the resignature. Okay, that's the case. So I browse to my machine. I need to add to the inventory. Okay, win.mssql. Okay. And we can run this machine. I want this fast, so I will say I move it, means identical, so I will not wait until Windows will be, let's say, reconfiguring the devices, right? It will be just starting at once. So Windows is started. So now probably the MS SQL is starting. And I'm back in the production. So that is very nice because my data is just very fresh and I'm in production again. If will be the case that I will need the snapshot, right? So I can say, okay, there is something wrong. Maybe I need to revert to my previous version. Okay, so now I was already written. Okay, there is more records because this was records previous and then the new one. Okay, and now I reverting to the snapshot. So after reverting, of course, machine was power off and my, okay, I need to run the script. The script will have an error, of course, because it's not finding anything, but now I can power off. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it is running again. So when I will check now, okay, no, sorry, wrong. When I check now, so I have a just current status, but I actually do this demo wrong. I need to redo it one more time. So because I wanted to show you that when I come back to the snapshot, it will be showing me exactly the number of the we will just run check once the machine is started. So that will be situation from the time when the snapshot was taken, right? So it will be not just a few records which we have written recently. Okay, so the IP is there, so I guess that MS SQL is started. Let us see. Yeah, and we have 1060,602. So that is exactly at that time when the script was running. It was exactly this situation that we had so many records written. Of course, when I start the new screen, a new script, it will be create a new database, and we're starting from the one. So now, of course, when I stopped, then I check, then I have a just now situation. Okay, so that is a great options to make everything up and running very quickly. So I will come back again from the disaster recovery. Okay, so I can remove from the inventory. Then I will unmount this. Okay, now I can show you again that our snapshots were not running for this time being. It says 1636 and we have 43, and on the source, source is still not there. Okay, let us see if the machine already started by meantime. Yeah, the Jovian is still booting because it took time to reboot everything. So after booting the Jovian, I'm able to show the new snapshot. Of course, at that time the snapshot were not running at all because I powered off my production. Okay, so let us rescan. After rescan, we can start our machine again. And I can try also. Okay, so MS SQL is up and running now. And we have seen that this machine is running a snapshot every time. So how it works, we have the we have the command line interface, and we can easily just run set, and the set is just the settings, and it's showing us what kind of task is running now. So it is showing me that now I have a backup node, which is 192.168.142. So access is on 042, but replication I was setting on 1. You can just select the different IP address which is running on the second card, and then the second card here was, in this case, a dedicated network interface for the replication. The default plan is defined like this. I just need every minute for the last hour snapshots. If this is my default, but actually I'm running a bit different retention plan here. So I decided to, for the better demo, have every minute for the last 15 minutes and have every hour for the last day and maybe every 4 hours for the last week. So that I will have a bit more snapshot. And on the destination I have exactly same plan, but of course the plan don't need to be the same, right? And my volume, source volume, is on the pool 0 zvol 01, and that is exactly the pool pool 0 zvol 01, and that is exactly the one storage which is connected here, and it's running my Win 007. That's my MS SQL. Okay, when I will just put the command set ES6, I will see my settings for the VMware server, right? So the settings for the VMware server is I'm connected to the vCenters because that's the IP of the vCenter. I could also connect directly to my hosts, right? But because I'm running vCenter, so I prefer to connect to vCenter. And then I'm connected to the data center and I'm connected to this data store, right? So that's the commands. And pool 0 zvol 01 is connected to this volume. So on my storage I have zvol 01, and on my ES6 that's the local iSCSI 1, right? So there are plenty different commands. So if you just put ODPS, you will have the usage examples, and you will have the commands syntax. So that's the ES6 command syntax, and that's the ODPS. ODPS, so Offsite Data Protection Service syntax. Very simple, and you have examples here, right? So in our example, we have this task. If we want to change something, then we can just stop the task, we can delete the task and redefine it with the different settings. Same with the ES6. So maybe ES6 is much more interesting at this moment. On the last webinars in April or February, I was showing already how to define and remove the tasks. Maybe we can remove the setup for the VMware, right? So now I will need to use the command like detach. So ODPS ES6 detach. So I will copy this. So sorry, I will copy this. So and paste. ES6 detach data stores, that the syntax, and now I see that I have a pool 0, yes, and my data set name is zvol 01, right? Okay, so when I run such detach, I get a message VMware this data store was detached, and now when I put the set ES6, I see, okay, this attached volume disappear. Also, I see I have a registered server. I can try to unregister this server. So there is a command also here. I will copy to have it faster. So the unregister, okay. Sorry, unregister, ODPS. Unregistered, my server was 236, right? That's my vCenter. Okay, unregistered. When I put the set 6 to check the settings, okay, I see nothing is registered. So I don't have registered 6. I don't have registered any data store. And you see the snapshots are not done anymore. Of course, snapshots are running on the storage all the time. That's my task. That didn't change at all. But now I resign from the snapshots on the virtual machines, right? Let me do these settings again. Let us register everything back. So now I will register, so I copy this command, also maybe ODPS. Okay, so ODPS paste register. So the first one we need to put IP address. Of course, example was 10. My is 236. User. My username will be add. And my password is 1, 2, 3. Okay. So when I go to set ASX, our server is registered already. Okay, so we have a progress. That's the registered server. Okay, but no data store is attached. So registering is the first step, and attaching the data store is a second step. So I will also copy this, so it will be much faster. So I will have a attach. Okay, so we need to check attach data store, that's the syntax, pool 0, that's the case. My data set is a zvol 01. Okay, data store belongs to syntax, and IP is 236. Okay, on the vCenter. So the advantage of vCenter is that I put vCenter and then I can move the data store between vCenter nodes, which belongs to vCenter, and everything will work, right? So data center name is just our data center name is just data center, as you see here, right? And our data store name is, if I don't remember, I can just copy. So copy, okay, and I can paste it. Okay, so something wrong. ODPS ES6 attach data store pool 0 zvol 01 data store 192.168.0.236. Of course, data center is wrong. Okay, everything must be correct. And when I do the set ES6 now, oh, double, okay. ES6 set, it will work as well, okay. Yeah, so now we can expect, you see the last snapshot was, it was like 450, okay, and now it's 456. And now it's the case, it is running already. So it was not so long when I was just deleting and recreating this setup, took a few minutes, but now everything is up and running again. So there is another option that you maybe don't need this snapshot really running. So now it's creating and will be removing, right? So you can also add such a parameter to the virtual machine, and you can say, okay, you want to skip auto snap all the time, or maybe you want to skip, you know, from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. 09, right? So now when I put this then the next snapshot will be not done, because you can put auto skip and then it will just skip all the snapshots, ignore the request, or you can put the skip from till, and also you can put many of them with the comma, like this. So you can put, like, let's say from 8 a.m. to 12:30, for example, and from 14:00 to 18:30, right? So you can put many of them, right? So you can put comma as many as you wish. So that will be telling at what time this snapshot needs to be ignored and not made. Maybe you have a peak season and you don't want to have a virtual machine snapshot to be done. It's enough when it's just after hours. Anyway, you don't need it, but just in case, you may also run it. And you can also put like Monday till Friday, right? And on the weekend you don't care. On the weekend, when it's not in the weekend, means it is Saturday and Sunday, it will be done all the time, right? Okay, so now you see we have skipped, so no more snapshots are done, right? And if I want that this should be running again, so I can just modify and say, okay, it was a 14 till 16:30. So now it should be already out of the current time, right? So from in the morning till 12:30 and then 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. 30. Okay, then it means the next minute the snapshot will be already working again, because it's not in the range when I want the snapshot to be skipped, right? So that's the demonstration of the offsite data protection service. Yesterday I had a demonstration for the US customer and they were really excited about this feature. Today I was also having another demo to our German customer. He will set up this at once. We were just setting local snapshots, and now he's buying the disk for the local copy at least, so he will already sell as a extra services to customer, because he's a kind of internet service provider, and will be selling these extra services to customers. So it's also very nice option to make business with this, offering more to the customers, easy way, right? So I'm done for today's presentation. We finished within 1 hour. I'm happy about being so good in time. As I mentioned, you see now it is working again, because our setup is already out of the range, so the skip is out of the current time. That's why it is working again. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you very much for the time, and please ask questions if you have any, and we'll be happy to help you. Thank you very much, and bye.